Morning YouTube, metalhead weatherman here, or it's morning by the time I do this. Just want to let you guys know we've made it to the weekend. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Big thanks to anyone who has put on the camo, who's put on the uniform to serve our country. So just want to say anyone that's also has a that is also a family member of someone who has served the country, I want to say thank you to you as well. A lot of people don't see you guys and the sacrifices that you make along the way. So big thanks to you as well as anyone who has served. That being said, with it being Memorial Day weekend, there's plenty of weather usually to talk about, and this weekend is no exception. Still in a relatively active pattern right now. Next 3 days we have some form of risk for severe weather. Today and tomorrow we have slight risk, and then a marginal risk on Monday. Pretty much this is going to be centered around the Central Plains. It's nothing too surprising. In fact, today is one of two slight risk. We have a very familiar area in mind again. It seems like I cannot stop calling this place's name over towards New Mexico and the Texas line, mainly over towards New Mexico today. But basically over towards Roswell, New Mexico, we could be watching you guys maybe for the threat of all three hazards, albeit the tornado threat is marginal, but this is mainly going to be a wind and hail event, especially hail. Then our secondary area right here, we have a little bit further to the northwestern plains, I should say, where western Nebraska, western parts of South Dakota, and then also even parts of Wyoming and Montana are in the action here. Can't disinclude this little area just to the east of Denver as well. With this, it's pretty much a similar deal. Marginal tornado threat, wind and hail are the main threats. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. So anywhere from Cheyenne, Rapid City, and just to the east of Sheridan by a good bit, we could be watching you guys for severe weather. I'm leaning towards the hail threat being the biggest topic here, but damaging winds are definitely on the table as well, and maybe a tornado. So for day 2, we watch the areas slip back to the south just a little bit, or north, depending on which perspective you were looking at from slight risk. And now we're getting more towards the Central Plains. We're starting to finally get away from New Mexico just a little bit here, but there's still a little bit of a chance of a slight risk on this line right here. And it's not to say that you can't see anything in this marginal risk. We've seen quite a few instances where that's occurred. So we got to keep an eye on you guys still in New Mexico, but the threat is starting to maybe start to decrease just a little bit. But now we're looking more so towards southeastern Colorado. We're looking towards western Kansas and the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. Again, it's a pretty similar threat setup. Wind and hail, the main threats. Tornado threat is marginal at best. Then on day 3, we're looking at a marginal risk as of right now that's hanging around both North and South Dakota. So pretty much anywhere north of Valentine, Nebraska, into South Dakota, all the way up towards Minot, and pretty much really towards the U.S.-Canadian border. There is a very small chance of severe weather as of right now. This could potentially be upgraded. If it does, most likely the threat will be for hail. But nonetheless, make sure you're staying whether we're on Memorial Day itself. Most likely these storms won't fire until mid to late afternoon, I would say. So the main thing that you should do if you're going to do your grilling, just do it early if you can. If you can, it's okay. Just make sure you're keeping an eye on the weather nonetheless. Also, another thing to make note of here is the fact that we also have this tropical disturbance here that's off of the mid-Atlantic coast here. This is going to be a player in causing a lot of wet weather over here. Nothing significant to be expected across these regions here, but nonetheless could cause a little bit of inconvenience for you guys over here towards North and South Carolina. Maybe even more so towards the mid-Atlantic as we get later into the weekend. So this is pretty much what we're looking at right now as far as this setup is concerned. Again, no severe to be concerned with. The storm is not going to form into a tropical storm at this point. It's a very low chance of that happening, but with the way things are set up right now, it's nothing that I would be really concerned with at the moment. When we look at the models, we can kind of see that too. Here's our tropical disturbance right here, just sitting off the coast. This is looking into the mid-levels of the atmosphere. It doesn't really matter at this point. It shows up pretty easily. It's mildly strong, but it's not going to strengthen quickly enough to really organize into anything of major significance. And later today, some of that storm actually starts to go inland over towards South Carolina. Meanwhile, while that's going on here, we have these sneaky little short waves that have severe weather potential and maybe could even produce a brief tornado. These have to be watched very closely. But for the most part, I'm not super concerned about a severe weather outbreak at the moment. If there's nothing to do, I may very well even go live on it, but most likely I would lean more so towards no. When we look at the severe setup for Sunday, it's going to be late into the evening, into the overnight, and that's when we could see maybe a few pulse severe storms over here, maybe even a tornado possible. Mostly thinking hail will be the main threat there. So we're looking towards Sunday night. We can see that this tropical low has moved inland entirely. It's going to have a pretty broad wind field. In fact, if you listen really closely, you probably could occasionally hear the winds blowing outside where I am right now, because I live in Atlanta, and this wind field is pretty large at the mid-level, so probably going to be pretty windy across the southeast this weekend. So it'll be a good day to go fly a kite or be out on the lake and go fishing. That breeze is going to feel pretty nice. It also might keep the temperatures down just a little bit. But that's pretty much what we have going on for the weekend so far on that end. I'll also go ahead and show you a look at the National Hurricane Center for this area right here. You have a 0% chance now of development. This has recently been updated about a couple of hours ago. I've been seeing 10% for the longest here. And this is within the 2-day outlook. Within the 7-day outlook now, I'm still thinking that it's going to be a 0% chance, honestly. Probably not going to see too many more advisories on this, but I figured I'd at least show you and let you be aware of what's going on right now. We're going to be getting more and more familiar with this site throughout the course of the next few months, given the fact that hurricane season starts on June 1st. So now that we've looked at all the crazy stuff, let's go ahead and look at the actual temperatures for the week. So this is what we're dealing with right now, I would say. Temperatures are mild over here towards the Midwest here and parts of the deep south. This is where the temperatures are going to most likely be warmest to start out. But where that low is developed, look at how those temperatures are being a little bit more mellowed out. That is pretty nice right there, if I'm being honest. Especially for me being a landscaper, if I were to be outside this weekend, which I might. It's looking pretty good. I mean, there could be some showers and storms here, but even then, if you're a little bit further to the west of the storm here, temperatures are going to be a lot nicer. We're going to be sitting into the 60s and 70s more so than the 80s. Usually during this time, you end up being towards the 80s over towards this region. Like I said, the warmest temperatures are mainly going to be towards the heart of the country where we're getting those 80-degree, 90-degree temperatures, and then towards the southwest around the desert, of course, too. But other than that, it's not a horrible weekend. Not anywhere near as bad as I was once thinking, because I looked at some models well in advance here. And while you have to take those with a grain of salt, I was thinking if this could be what Memorial Day looks like, oh boy, that's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be hot. So we do see a resurgence of those temperatures a little bit more so towards the deep south on Sunday. Of course, southwest still hot. But, like I said, not anywhere near as crazy as I once thought it would be. Towards Monday, we start to warm back up towards the southeast as that low pressure starts to deteriorate and pass on. And then as we get into Tuesday, when we start the work week for a lot of us again, we'll probably start to see an increase in temperatures for the rest of the eastern half of the country here. So as far as that's concerned, nothing too out of the ordinary, maybe a little bit cooler than average, which is a nice break for some of us. But another thing to make note of is the increase in wind. Over towards the coast of the Carolinas here, we could easily see some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts with this setup. And then even across the southeast here, throughout the course of the day, we could see some increased wind gusts up to about 30 to 40. Wind advisories are very much possible here, so just make sure you have some stuff tied down so it doesn't go rolling down the street this weekend. That's really my best course of advice to give you. Then over towards the central part of the U.S., we often have a lot of wind around these areas. Nothing too far out of the ordinary here. A little bit of an increase in wind with that shortwave trough that's set up over this region. We could see some 40-mile-per-hour gusts over there. But overall, nothing too crazy. Off towards the west coast, of course, sometimes it'll get a little bit windy over there, but nothing's going to be making its way inland. If you're out on the ocean, though, maybe take note of this as well towards the northwest and central west coast here. But other than that, nothing too crazy going on here. And by Tuesday, a lot of these winds will be dying down. So now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and look at the reflectivity here as a whole. This is what the radar could look like throughout the course of the weekend. This low did a decent job of strengthening it. Dropped all the way down to a 999 millibar low here. But it weakens as it gets closer to land here. Hence further why I don't see a real chance of this developing. Nonetheless, though, something to keep an eye on with the severe weather here. Mainly looks like a line of storms, maybe some damaging wind potential. You kind of see the small backward C shape. If these storms strengthen enough, they could definitely become a problem. And then as time goes on, we watch that low move in. Not a lot of shower and storm coverage. It's mainly going to just keep the temperatures cool, which is really nice. And then as we look towards Sunday night into Monday, possible severe storms here. It's a very small, isolated patch of that there. And then towards Monday, pretty similar deal. A little bit more widespread, but for the most part, pretty much in between the Dakota borderlines is where I'm seeing the greatest focus of storm coverage here. Another interesting feature to look at here on Tuesday, and we'll get more into that later this week, is this little low pressure that develops off the coast of Texas here and starts to head into the Gulf. That could be interesting because this is right around the time hurricane season starts, and the most favorable development areas often tend to be just off of the coast here. So if something does develop, that could be our first named storm. Is the likelihood high? I'm leaning more towards no. But if it stalls out, anything's possible. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, you know what to do. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and obliterate that share button too. Also, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. But this has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. You may see me again this weekend. Might not. Until then, though, take care and have a nice weekend.